It is Monday, June 8th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Turkish voters deliver a dramatic blow to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his ruling Justice Development Party with initial election results showing it losing its majority in parliament. Israel speeds up its battle against the encroaching threat of an international boycott movement. And later on the show, something happy. Tel Aviv prepares for its annual Pride Parade, expected to draw tens of thousands from around the world. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi, and we begin in Turkey. Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan ambitions of assuming greater powers suffered a blow when results of parliamentary elections began flowing in yesterday, indicating a win for his AK party, but by far lower than expected margin, forcing him to enter a coalition in order to form a stable government. The ruling Justice and Development Party, AKP, has framed the June 7th election in Turkey as a key hurdle on the path to the powerful presidential system that President Recep Erdogan wanted to introduce. More than 53.7 million Turkish voters headed to the polls yesterday for that crucial parliamentary election, and with about 99% of the vote counted thus far, and despite being well ahead of other parties with the support of around 40% of the populace, still, Erdogan seems set to receive fewer than 276 seats, the bare minimum to keep its parliamentary majority. The results shattered Erdogan's dream of achieving a new constitution to switch Turkey from a parliamentary to a presidential system, a move that would have required a two-thirds majority in the parliament. Yesterday's elections also saw a boost for the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, which surpassed the 10% electoral threshold and is in the parliament, and that is, in effect, making history in Turkey this morning. We are joined in studio by Channel 1 Foreign Affairs editor Oren. Hi, Oren. Good morning to you. And before we break it down, let's take a look at the following report, which basically takes a look at what happened in Turkey yesterday as people headed to the polls before these dramatic results came in.
Turks went to the polls today with lots of excitement, but also many fears about the future. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan cast his vote early in this morning.
There was a high turnout for these elections. You can see this in all regions of Turkey. This proves that our democracy is strong.
Turkey's leading AKP party is expected to win. The question is how much power President Erdogan will have and whether he will win enough mandates to change the Turkish constitution. Erdogan, who was elected prime minister in 2003, had to step down after his third term in 2014, but is now seeking to increase his presidential powers, a controversial move criticized by his opponents.
They've robbed in the name of God and jumped into a pool of sins. The Turkish people have never seen their kind before. And now Erdogan is after being an executive president. Erdogan does not deserve the office.
On Friday, 2 people were killed and at least 200 were injured in 2 bomb attacks at the election rally of the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, in the city of Diyarbakir. The incident is still under investigation. However, it sparked renewed outrage on the part of Kurds who accused Erdogan of neglecting them and their security. Erdogan was quick to dismiss the accusations.
What happened in Diyarbakir yesterday was not against a particular political party. This is a provocative act meant to mar the election. I hope our wounded will recover soon, and I extend my sympathies to those who died.
It's been almost 2 years since thousands of Turks turned the now infamous Gezi Park in Istanbul into a protest zone. What started as demonstrations against government plans to destroy the park transformed into national-wide protests against Erdogan and Turkey's Islamization. While the memories have faded, the problems remain. And now the Turkish people will decide what kind of country they wish to build for themselves.
We're going straight first to Istanbul, where we're joined by freelance journalist Arzu Geybula. Arzu, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, I want to tell you that newspapers around the world, as well as here where we're sitting in Israel, if I bring this up, there's a picture, very much so, of the Kurdish supporters in Diyarbakir celebrating, because I think before we touch on how much power Erdogan lost, one of the most momentous things of these elections is that the Kurdish party is in the parliament. Isn't that so?
Yes, these elections had many firsts, and the fact that HDP made it to the party is incredible, and it is the first time that we have minority Kurdish or at least a party that represents Kurdish interests in the parliament.
And getting the 2 digits. Now, in terms of the elections overall, most of the results are in. I think it's 99.9. It is clear that this is going to be a coalition. Reactions this morning in Istanbul, in Turkey actually, to these results, what are they?
Well, there are many scenarios right now, and I was just going through some of the headlines, and the previous scenarios are still in place. You know, whether AKP will form a coalition with the Nationalist Party, whether the opposition parties are going to form a coalition against the AKP, but all of them have their own setbacks, because AKP and MHP coalition won't mean much development and progress, because MHP is also very conservative and also has very strong nationalistic interests, and they also cater for many of the so to say conservative voters in Turkey. And MHP will never form a coalition with HDP because they do not have any sort of understanding of the Kurdish rights, and they don't want to deal with this because this is number one issue they want to keep out of their agenda.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing because it sounds like an Israeli coalition. But no, question though, when it comes to, I mean, a coalition will be formed in one shape or the other, but this really takes away from the dream of Erdogan to become president or to change the system and the presidency in Turkey. That has burst. I mean, that is gone. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because none of the other parties were interested in presidential republic anyway. It was the only party that was actually pushing for this was AKP and Erdogan. So definitely this will have to wait at least until next elections. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in next elections, but certainly there is a talk of a coalition and probably early elections, a year and a half early elections.
Wow, that really sounds like Israel. But that said, Arzu, do stay with us for a couple more minutes, because Oren Nahari, Senior Foreign Affairs Editor for Channel 1, I want to ask you, this was the big dream for Erdogan. This was the so-called revision. And many people, you know, many analysts who sit in the studio usually tell me that the people of Turkey love Erdogan and you know, it's amazing, et cetera, et cetera. But they voted, you know, opposite to that, you know, to that notion.
Up to a point.
Okay.
Let's remember, first of all, Erdogan himself didn't stand up for election. He's the president,
true.
Although as a president he meddled in the politics far more than the current constitution of Turkey would allow, but that's a different matter. Nobody questioned the fact that he'll still be the force in the AKP coalition,
in the
and he'll be in the party. His spirit will be above the politics in Turkey, and he managed in the last 10, 15 years to change completely the course of Turkey from a secular country that was ruled by, or at least its way was dictated by the army, the courts, the secular media, etc., etc. He changed it completely to his country in his vision, more than the vision of Ataturk.
Yeah.
So this hasn't changed much, and also, and as we've heard from Istanbul now, the likely coalition will still be very nationalistic, very Muslim in its way, so we will not see that much changes. Although, of course, the dream of him that he'll be the president in a manner of, let's say, American or more probably Russian presidency.
I was about to say, because this felt like a move, a very Putin-esque move in many ways.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that it did. When
with
Putin...
one big difference, Putin would have pulled it off. And he didn't, but still, he'll be the force. His word will be, I don't know if the law, but will be a law. And of course, you said, and it is true, you know, the comparisons with Israel are inevitable, especially one, that the move to uplift the barrier to parliament, in the case of Turkey, to 10%, forced the people that you didn't want in the parliament, Mr. Erdogan, forced them to pull the resources together to get one big party, and now they are in parliament with 80 seats, which is a lot.
Two-digit mandates. Yeah.
Yes, still, perhaps they'll have more autonomy. Their big dream is not there still.
And that's the million-dollar question, I think, when it comes to the Kurds around the region entirely. Arzu, you're still with us. The reactions from the people of Turkey this morning, because pictures that we're seeing around are jubilation. Is that really the case, though?
Well, there were celebrations even in Taksim last night of the Kurdish groups celebrating the victory of the HDP. There's certainly I mean, yesterday when I was looking at people who were coming to Kastabosm, there were really older generation Turks who really care about Turkey. You know, women and elder who were 70, who were 80 years old, who were walking with their grandchildren to the polls. So there was a lot of hope in these elections, and it was really incredible to see the results, that these hopes were really proved. And yes, people are really happy because finally AKP doesn't have the majority. That having said this, they still have the most seats in the parliament. Right. But of course, it's a very different dynamic now, and people are happy because from what I've heard people say in general, it was that AKP had to go, that this was too much, that enough has happened, and we've had enough of them. So we'll see what's going to happen. It's a really interesting time for Turkey after these elections.
No, definitely, very much so. Arzo, I want to thank you.
And the big question is, will there be real changes in policy? In two major areas. First of all, one that concerns us less is the economy, because after all, it was the economy that raised Erdogan, and perhaps it was the economy that stalled him down now that there is a mini crisis in Turkey, and they need to do something about it. That's first and foremost. And also, of course, foreign policy. Yes. Turkey is now alone in the region. It's funny in a way. It is one of the, if not the, powerhouse in the Eastern Mediterranean, but still, it is alone, it is isolated, it's got a crisis with Israel, with Greece, of course, with Syria, with other Arab countries, with Iran, although it's trying to meddle things. So perhaps we'll see a difference there, although I'm not sure about it, because Erdogan is not known for deep comprehension and deep thinking, and perhaps coming to the conclusion that he was wrong somewhere. I do not see him acting like that. That was a very
PC way of describing it.
Yes, but it was.
Yes, it is, though, you know, it is a bit of a chipping off of the pursuit of power for Erdogan, and I think we'll leave it at that. But fascinating results this morning from Turkey as we move along. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday called for the country to unite in the face of what he described as an organized effort to delegitimize Israel's very existence. In the wake of several high-profile attempts to boycott Israel in the financial, cultural, academic, and sports arenas, Netanyahu asked the country to close ranks in order to, quote him, shatter the lies of our enemies. The alarm bells raised here in Israel, where we're sitting, echoed across the world. In Las Vegas, for example, a group of Israeli supporting philanthropists of opposite spectrums of the political dial met over the weekend to formulate a plan of action of their own, tackling the same threats. With more and more BDS-aimed campaigns coming to light, the latest a reported demand by the Chinese government not to allow its citizens to work construction jobs in the West Bank. Regular Israeli citizens are only now beginning to feel the sting of what's been building up under the surface for years. Let's first take a look at Mandy Kogosowski's report and break it down from there.
Israel is putting the battle against BDS and other international boycott attempts at the front and center of its agenda, positioning it as an existential threat to the country without holding back on neither rhetoric nor funds. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that the cabinet will be putting forth a network to fight what he deems as, quote, the trap of organized hypocrisy against the state of Israel.
Against attempts to attack Israel with lies, false accusations, and boycotts, we must line up, right and left, to rebuff the pressure, expose the lies, and attack those who attack us. We will gather forces in Israel and around the world to shatter the lies of our enemies, and we will fight for Israel's right to live in peace and security, to live at all.
Over the weekend, Netanyahu held consultations with several government officials regarding possible action plans against the international boycott, which include hiring additional staff and allocating over $25 million to the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Also this weekend, billionaire Sheldon Adelson held an emergency conference in Las Vegas, attended by some 50 representatives of Jewish and pro-Israel organizations, in order to coordinate a strategy that will help Israel. But it may not be quite so simple.
My vision for this whole summit is based upon the idea that nobody has experienced yet before in the fight against delegitimization and demonization of Israel, and that is to do it collaboratively. So the idea it's a challenge to get Jewish groups to work together.
The summit follows a stormy week, during which Britain's National Student Union joined BDS, and Orange CEO Stéphane Richard sparked a still ongoing French-Israeli diplomatic crisis after saying that he would terminate the company's ties with Israel, quote, tomorrow, only to quickly retract and apologize profusely. And this is not the end. Yesterday, it was reported that the Chinese government demands that workers sent to Israel will not be put to work in West Bank settlements. These days, it appears that the boycott is Israel's new Iran.
And to help us understand the threat and the Israeli government's proposed reaction to it, we're joined in studio still by Channel 1's Foreign Affairs editor, Oren Nehari. You're still here. By the General Director of Peace Now, Yariv Oppenheimer.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And also on the phone via Skype by Professor of Political Studies at Bar-Ilan University, President of NGO Monitor, Professor Gerald Steinberg. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to start with you, Oren Nehari, because the Orange CEO and actually the Orange saga that we dealt with a lot last week, and I think the country of Israel, if one was living here, was dealing with it mostly within the media. That was a phenomenal trail back from a statement to now the Orange CEO is about to arrive in Israel as a, in a visit, and most likely, kiss and hug the Prime Minister of Israel. How did this come about?
On his knees, yes.
Yes.
So how did it come about? He made a faux pas. Let's be clear about it. And his statement, and I think he probably meant it. And after that, received all kinds of hints. And perhaps understood that he cannot do it from political and financial point of view, and he was faced with a risk of losing perhaps tens or even hundreds of millions of euros in compensation damages. So now he tries his best.
Not only that, but this led also to Hollande calling Netanyahu to Fabius.
Yes. Yeah. It was all in the making. The problem is that, well, there are so many problems,
yes,
that these two events coming one on the heels of the other, the FIFA Congress, right, and now the problem of Orange, we are a country of extremes. Either we are in deep down in despair, or we are the rulers of the world. There's no middle in Israeli politics. So in these two events, you can see either people saying, we showed them everything, they're coming on their knees, and we beat them, nothing to worry about, or look at it, the entire world is going to boycott us. So again, there are so many things to say about it. I'll say one thing that I think is the most important. Netanyahu is right, in my opinion, when he says that the ultimate goal of the BDS movement,
right,
the BDS movement, is really not 67 Israel, but 47 Israel, meaning they want to, in one way or another, delegitimize the state of Israel, not only the conquest of 1967, but they are not the battlefield. The battlefield is Europe. The battlefield is the campuses and the universities in the United States. The battlefield is the new generation of Israelis and Jews, and around the world they are liberal. They are for Tikkun Olam. They are for, let's say, some kind of a solution to the Palestinian problem. I don't know if it's in the making, if it can be happened, but this is the problem. We are fighting on their souls. We are fighting for not only for, let's say, agricultural product, whether they'll be from the Golan Heights,
rather than for the support.
But we are fighting in the academia, we are fighting everywhere, and the fight is there, not against the BDS. The BDS, it's a lost cause.
Professor Gerald Steinberg with us, I want to ask you, because what Oren Nehari is mentioning is very true, and we've seen that, and we hear that from people in the United States, we hear it in Europe. Look at the student union in the UK. It is that battle. I'm putting BDS for a second on the sidelines of the academia losing, the world, so to speak, next brains and minds, hearts and souls, whatever you want, in their support for Israel, even, Jews. How can one combat that?
Well, beyond the academia, first of all, these pieces are all connected together. We can't really put BDS on the side because the same people, the same organizations, the same sources of money, which I'll talk about in a minute, are very active on the campuses. They're active in the labor unions. They're active in the churches. They're active across the board. They're active, of course, against the companies like Orange. We've got now in Zurich an organization called Breaking the Silence, maybe 10 Israelis, but they have $1 million actually Swiss francs now, to spread the concept, the indoctrination that Israel is a country of war criminals, criminals, that Israel doesn't follow international law. Those pieces are all put together, and they reinforce each other. It's certainly true that on the campuses, you've also got the addition of a very strong post-colonial ideology that says that the West is guilty, Israel is the spearhead of Western colonialism and neo-colonialism, and they talk about occupation. All these things are mushed together within this kind of ideology. But I think the main point that has to be added is there's a huge amount of money behind this. We're talking at least 100 to 200 million euros in dollars and francs, depending on how you count it. You've got organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch that single out Israel, that are obsessed by Israel. Ken Roth, the head of Human Rights Watch based in the U.S., has a very clear anti-Israel obsession. And whenever the opportunity arises, he says Israel violates international law, Israel commits war crimes. All those pieces are reinforced. We have to have a better diagnosis of the problem, and then we can start dealing with various solutions to that. And the solutions, as Oren has said, are not going from despair to great joy over a single victory or a single defeat, but understanding that we're in a political war. And the point that was made that this is the 47 borders, not the 67 issues, that's central in here. We need to be better at separating those two issues. We need a strategy. And up until now, we've had bits and pieces of a strategy. One of the purposes of the Adelson-Saban summit that took place in Las Vegas a few days ago was to develop a coherent strategy. The Israeli government really hasn't done that.
And speaking of, the Israeli government, Yariv Oppenheimer, I'm sure that you saw also the reports that, and everybody's staying with us, you saw the reports of, I think it's 100 million shekels that are going to be allocated towards the battle for Israel's image or against the BDS. But when you look at that, maybe if you're listening to Professor Steinberg, breaking the silence, would you say that that is also an organization that is detrimental to the existence of Israel?
First of all, Breaking the Silence is an organization based on soldiers that fight in Gaza and risk their life. So I have a lot of respect for people that don't just write what they think, but also was there during the war, and I respect what they are doing. But I think that Gerald, with all my respect to his work, the issue of money is not so important. Sheldon Adelson has a lot of money. Some of the BDS people has
a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not about the money, it's about the substance. And the world is ready to recognize, and not only to recognize, to support Israel as a Jewish democratic state, including the liberal Jews and the liberal people around the world. The world is not ready to accept Israel as a Jewish democratic and occupying state. This is exactly the point. And you can have a lot of money, you can have strategy, you can have billionaires. If you will not change the policy, the movement against Israel will get stronger and stronger. Some of it will be radical, like the BDS, that will call for the end of Israel as a Jewish state, but some of it, and the most important part of it, will be the one that are saying we are not ready to accept the occupation. And without stopping the occupation in the West Bank and what is going on around Gaza, until then, Israel cannot call itself a democratic state.
It's a very valid point, because if there is a strategy, and I'm asking everybody, if there is a strategy, and to you as well, Professor Steinberg, but doesn't this, if organizations are singled out, such as Breaking the Silence, which, as Yariv Oppenheimer mentioned, include soldiers, who serve in Israel's boards, and in a democratic state have a right to, say their opinion. Oren Nahari, we're looking at a strategy. Hold on, Professor Steinberg, I'll be with you in a second. Are we looking at a strategy that can also separate them from, from the fabric of the Israeli society?
First of all, I would not like to silence anybody in any democratic society, be it from the right, be it from the left. I think it's an extreme measure, shouldn't be done. Let's continue from there. One of the strength points of Israel, when we come to show our good face, and we have it, to the world, is exactly that this is a democratic, that this is a liberal country, that this country will have a gay parade. These kind of things are better ambassadors for the state of Israel in Europe and in America than all the other things, perhaps not in Russia. One other thing, and that is important, and Yariv mentioned it. We are fighting, it is not only, and here perhaps I'm a little bit with odds with my friend Professor Steinberg, I do not think that this is one solid battle. That is one strategy to beat all. There is the BDS movement. There is our, let's say, diplomatic struggle with the EU. There is the academia, etc. And our weak point, even from a Hasbara point of view, is 1967, is the fact that there is not at the moment a peace process with the Palestinians, and the world, rightly or wrongly, blames Israel for it. The world is hypocrite, fine. This is the world, we have to deal with it. And one other thing is the point of the settlements. Not one, it has to be said honestly, not one country on the face of the earth accept that these settlements are part of Israel, that they are legitimate. And this is our weak point, and this has to be dealt. And the money of Mr. Edelson and Mr. Saban and even the government of Israel, and it is important that they contribute, that they do it. This is, let's say, the attitude that would have worked years before. Now, in the campuses, you have to convince people that you are right with the social media, with the other places, in the Hillel and the other places. And this is our weak point, and we have to have initiative, not only against the BDS, political and strategic initiative to show that we are the ones who want peace, that there are problems, there are security, whatever you want, but still that we are leading in that area. This will be the best Asbara that we can get. Not against the BDS again, but on the fight for the diplomacy and the statehood of Israel in Europe, let's say.
Professor Steinberg, see, I'm sure that you want to react, but in terms of that there cannot be just one strategy, because at the end of the day, and again, I'm going to say put the BDS aside, because in Europe there are groups, there are foreign ministers that are calling to boycott settlements and have been calling to boycott settlements because they are not recognized internationally as valid or lawful.
Look, I agree with everybody on the panel in terms of there's a lot of complexity here. Different audiences require different messaging. We need to have a complex approach, and we can't simply ignore the diplomatic aspect of that. It would be good, certainly, to have at least a pretend peace process in the sense of going through the motion, just like the Palestinians do. And I think even Yariv would agree with me that the Palestinian leadership does not really have a peace process. But it does appeal. The language and the sense of victimization does appeal. That's a part of it, and we need to be able to deal with that as well. But on the other side, just to have a peace process, just to have negotiations has never worked either. We need to understand that, for instance, a lot of the funding that's going to the organizations that are trying to, that call Israel an apartheid state, again, that's not about 67, it's 47, 48. Israel's an apartheid state. Israel's a country of war criminals. Israel's a racist state because of the Bedouin, the Negev, and because of
Professor
the Arab minority.
I'm only going to hold you for a second just because we've got about 20 seconds left, and I know that Yariv wants to react really quickly.
I think we need to understand that the occupation is not a PR problem, is a crucial issue. And as long as the world believes that the occupation is going to come to an end because Israel wants to withdraw from the West Bank, the world will see us as a democratic state. But if we will say the occupation is part of our policy, our values, the message will be we are not a democratic state anymore. This is the problem.
Irrespective of your opinions, this is all the time that we had. Do stay with us. When we get back, Dash is a year old. Now the news. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this June
8th.
Jumping into power there, 2015, with Ami Kaufman in the studio. That makes me happy. Because Ami,
I couldn't forget, by the way, it's my wedding anniversary. So.
It is?
Yes.
Wait, today?
Yeah.
Okay, that may explain the pink. You can't come wearing pink and not have me. I don't know.
No, well, maybe.
But again, I'm telling you, it's a solid color.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, solid color. Ami Kaufman here, who's going to give us the news you missed while scanning the headlines while wearing pink.
Okay, let's start.
I'm awful.
As we saw in our news items before, the G7 is meeting in Germany.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera interviewed Russian President Vladimir Putin, who had something to say, I guess, ahead of this meeting, that the West has nothing to fear. Look at this headline from the Huffington Post. Yeah. Vladimir Putin says only an insane person would think Russia would attack NATO. Of course, this is as a result of the tensions in the Ukraine.
I have to counteract that and say only Putin can say something like that.
Yeah, I looked at it and I wonder, if I'm a NATO, if I live in a NATO, does that make me feel any calmer? I'm not sure.
Comfortable either. I'm like, okay, I must be crazy.
Here's the quote. As for some countries' concerns about Russia's possible aggressive actions, I think that only an insane person and only in a dream can imagine that Russia would suddenly attack NATO.
Kind of like the dream he had about the Ukraine.
Yes.
Yes, there's that. Okay.
I don't feel that calm about it. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
On to the Middle East. The Saudi-led coalition is really pounding Yemen, and it seems to me like just about every day we're hearing staggering numbers of people being killed. This report from the Daily Star, which is actually a Reuters report, about 44 people killed in the capital of Sana'a. To me, I'm not sure about it, but I think I'm seeing a lot more indiscriminate bombing. This isn't like really surgical stuff. And one has to wonder, if you're a Yemen person, this battle is going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran. To try to free them from different,
from what?
From what? I mean, they're bombing the hell out of them, and people are dying in droves.
And I think it's a very smart way of putting into words what I think is also going on in Syria in many ways.
Very much.
Very much so. Over the course of the last 4 years, we're seeing Yemen. The next one, the problem with Yemen is being such a poor country already before it started being the battlefield of these proxy wars. It's just Yemen is not going to exist.
It's not like they had it any easier before, right?
No, exactly.
Not at all.
Exactly. No, very true. And people are dying there daily, and it's important to bring these headlines. Yes.
Okay, on to something that I'm going to do a little feminist block of items now, if I may. And I'm very happy to be...
Is this the pink because of that? Okay.
Well, maybe it is connected subconsciously. I'm not sure.
Subconsciously, exactly. Okay.
I'm very happy to be presenting this next item to my colleague, a female anchor here, because this is a report that comes out every year from the Women's Media Center, which was founded in 2005 by Gloria Steinem, Robin Morgan, and Jane Fonda. And they come out with an annual report on the status of women in the American media. Now, things are not getting any better. It's pretty much the same as it was last year, very, very underrepresented. Men produce 62% of the average media. And I have some infographics.
60, how much?
62% of media across the board.
Across the board.
Internet, digital, whatever you want.
Of course.
I have some infographics that I'd like to show you, and if we could put them up.
Yeah.
The first one that we're going to bring up is the media landscape. First of all, in the evening broadcast, as you can see, 68% are male. In print, 62% are male. In internet, 58%. And in the wires, like Reuters and AP and AFP, 62% are male. Really strong domination.
No, really strong. And I'm getting upset. Thank you for this.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Good.
There's a lot more. Let's see some more. The next infographic that we have, it kind of breaks it down. This is the evening broadcast in the American media. As you can see, PBS is actually fairly okay, 58%. But look at the other ones. ABC, CBS, 70% of the evening broadcasts are dominated by male.
Male, and dare I say, I'm sorry, dominated by male, and I will say it by white males.
By white male, thank you very much for pointing that. Because the report also touches on color. Let's see the next one as well. Look at this. In print, the only paper that has more bylines by women at the bottom there is the Chicago Sun-Times. They're all, look at the New York Times, the Denver Post, USA Today, dominated by about 65 to 70%. Let's take a look at the next graphic.
Look at the New York Times, that's ridiculous. Okay,
the New York Times is on the top. It's in the worst.
Of course,
okay. The wires, male bylines. Look at Reuters, 59%, AP, 64%, male. Everything male.
And the first line that comes to my mind, because I'm upset now, is I was about to ask, what are we doing wrong? And I'm sorry, it's not our fault. And with all due respect, I don't need to, preach this. You're wearing pink. You're definitely a feminist. But see, listen to me. But the glass ceiling and whatnot. And the interesting bit about this is that back in the 80s, when it came about that women were making approximately 20 to 30% less money, even if they were holding the exact same job. And I'm talking about media, the exact same job, parallel. That came out, and there was this big change. I'm talking about American media. I will bet you money that women still in those positions, parallel to men in American media and around the world, are still making less money than their male counterparts.
I'm pretty sure you're right about that, definitely.
So, okay, next. I'm depressed now.
Okay.
Thank you.
On to our next item in this feminist block. You might have heard of Emma Sulkowicz. She kind of rose to national headlines in the States after she accused someone of raping her.
And walked around with a mattress.
She walked around the whole year with a mattress.
Columbia University, right?
Yeah, Columbia University didn't do anything about these complaints. So when she went to the police as well, they also did not decide to interrogate anybody. So she did this, and now she's coming out with a new art. I guess what it's a video.
It's a video
where she shows herself having sex in her dorm room. And she says this has nothing to do with the other art exhibition of the mattress. This is something totally new.
Okay.
Now, first of all, as a male, a white male, as you said, as a male, I want to believe
Yes.
Women who complain all the time.
Very questionable.
I can only wonder how does this help her? Why is this is going to raise eyebrows, isn't it?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
As a female, I will tell you that I think that this is to the point of, I mean, we are allowed to do anything and everything, but this, yeah. It's okay. I'm with you on that one.
All right.
And
off to something a little lighter.
Yes, next. One last one.
Miss Piggy has received a feminist award. It's a very important award, actually. It's from the Brooklyn's Sackler Center. Now, this is an award that's given every year. Some people that have gotten it are Toni Morrison, Connie Chung, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Anita Hill. And now, Miss Piggy. And we have a really cute little clip that I'd like to show you from the award.
Please, Miss Piggy receiving the award. Let's take a look.
Really nice.
Well, this is your award, Miss Piggy.
It's beautiful.
And you are going, yeah, that says Miss Piggy right on it. See? Yes, it does. It is for your spirit, for your determination, for your grit, for your humor, for your confidence.
Go on.
I will. And because you have taught millions of us what it is to have a dream and to go after that dream, and that the beauty comes from within. And for this, you have given a gift to the world, and we thank you.
Bravo.
I want to tell you, no, seriously, they're deserving, if only for pigs in space.
If only
for space. There we go. Okay, that was it for this. You're staying with us.
Okay.
It has been a year since leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi appeared in public for the first time to proclaim himself caliph of the Islamic State and urged supporters to take up arms, to quote him, around the world. Yes. Since then, the Islamic State group that he heads carried out and maintained a ferocious campaign to take over large parts of Iraq in order to form a caliphate. And the country is struggling to survive as a unified nation. ISIS, or Daesh, as you want to call them, began the offensive on June 9th, that's a year ago, and overran a third of the country. During the past year, not a day has gone by without the group making international headlines, usually due to its brutality, performing beheadings and mass executions, enslavement and rape as weapons of terror. The jihadists have been driven out of some areas, but still hold much of western Iraq and remain able to defeat Baghdad's forces and gain new territory, despite a year of heavy fighting and some 4,000 strikes carried out in a 10-month U.S.-led airstrike campaign. Let's take a look at the following report about the year that was the ISIS year in many, many ways and break it down from there.
Tonight, a look inside the command center of the U.S.-led operation against ISIS, devoted to fighting the terrorist extremists. We've been asked not to disclose its location.
So this is really where you coordinate everything, the whole battle space?
That's correct.
On those screens, video like this, streaming in from Syria and Iraq. Nearby, on a sprawling airbase, a remotely piloted aircraft, or as we call them, drones. They are in the fight 24/7 over Iraq, over Syria, armed with Hellfire missiles. Brigadier General Robert Castelvi has approved every airstrike.
Have you killed 10,000 fighters?
Well, that could be a conservative estimate.
But ISIS continues to recruit new fighters to its deadly cause, launching sensational attacks, most recently seizing control of the Iraqi city of Ramadi. Freeing Ramadi from the grip of ISIS remains a challenge, but the U.S. general in charge of the fight told us tonight that Iraqi security forces are already starting to retake the city.
Joined in studio by Paula Sleer, Middle East Bureau Chief for Russia Today. Paula, good morning to you. And let's go also straight to Iraq first. We're in Erbil. We're joined by freelance journalist Mohammed Saleh. Mohammed, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, too.
I'm sure no celebrations going on today as the anniversary, so to speak, and I'm being obviously, quite morose about it, of the rise of ISIS. Just a quick recap. Today, June 8th, this is, a year on since they basically came into the public recognitions of the world. How much power do they still hold in Iraq?
They do still hold a very significant amount of power, no doubt, and despite a few setbacks here and there, they've been able to expand in some parts of the country and to be a force that has to be reckoned with.
Force to be reckoned with is a mild understatement. The only people managing to gain any kind of traction through them as of late, or the battle against them this week. Where do we stand?
Well, there is currently a military operation, a joint military operation by the Iraqi army and the Shia paramilitary forces going on around Ramadi and in parts of Anbar province, but we have not really seen any sort of major progress in that operation, and it appears to be a quite difficult and major challenge for the Iraqi forces to be able to take back Ramadi.
Exactly, and I'm glad you raised that. Mohammed, do stay with us, because Paul Aslia, we've seen, Ramadi, with the entire Anbar province fall to the hands of ISIS just less than a month ago. What, as a journalist, it's so hard to cover it. What do we think? What do you think, when it comes to ISIS? What is their driving force to the point that the Middle East cannot deal with them, the West cannot deal with them, and they seem to be here to stay?
They certainly do seem to be here to stay. I mean, if we look at the US-led coalition airstrikes, those seem to be failing. There's something like $8.9 billion a day that the US is spending, and yet ISIS is controlling, if not more territory than it did last year, August, when those strikes began. The territory they control is said to be larger than the United Kingdom. And one of the problems with the airstrikes is, what is the end game? And some of the statements coming out are that we're talking about 3 years plus that these airstrikes could continue for. And if you look at what's happening in Yemen and the Saudi airstrikes there's also concern that some of the coalition partners are now going to withdraw from participating in these airstrikes to actually focus on the airstrikes in Yemen. You also need to have focus on the ground, and here you have your Kurdish fighters, your Peshmerga, who are coming to the fore. But you've seen the Iraqi army fold. You have a Syrian army that's been fighting for 4 years. It's also stretched. It's also exhausted. You have forces on the ground that have conflicting allegiances, whereas ISIS is a group that is very clear in its goals. It knows what it wants to achieve, and it's able to achieve that. And
Mohammed Salih, still with us from Erbil in Iraq. If you've heard us here in studio, is there a recognition within the civilians population, the citizens of Iraq, which I'm sure it's horrifying to go through these bombings yet again, just a decade after a war there? Is there an understanding, though, that there needs to be, or is there a wish for international forces to come in again and try and resolve the situation? Because the Peshmerga forces cannot do it alone, so it seems, and if then only in one part of the country. And clearly the Iraqi army is not facing ISIS in a way that is, that is winning the game. Is there a wish from the people of Iraq for international forces to come in again and to try and resolve this, would you say?
It is really difficult. It is really a difficult question to answer. And when you talk about Iraq, we have to be aware that there isn't really a united country, and different parts of the country, different communities have different opinions on this. As far as the Kurds and probably a significant number of Sunni Arabs are concerned, especially those who do not identify with ISIS or Daesh, they might be happy to see international forces on the ground, but as far as the other part of the country, the Shia majority part of the country is concerned, I don't think they will be much more favorable in terms of having international forces in Iraq. But the fact of the matter is also that if you have a determined and relatively strong ground force in the form of the Peshmerga, for example, and even in the south, in the form of the Shia paramilitary units who are willing to fight and carry on the fight on the ground, you won't probably need the presence of an international or foreign force on the ground. And strong air support coupled with the determined local ground force
could possibly do that, but Paul Aslia, in the very short time that we have left, what did that mean for the future of Iraq? There is no Iraq left in many ways, one can say.
There is no Iraq left, and let me just preface that by saying, as we look now at this so-called one-year anniversary, the ISIS has released statements on its social media that it's going to commemorate it, in inverted commas, on a par with September the 11th. So the international community is very worried, whether that means gaining more territory in Iraq and Syria, area, whether that means carrying out attacks in Europe and the United
we're talking
States,
about this
is
week.
very worrying.
That's eyes on this week when it comes to Iraq and the world policy. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. When we get back, Tel Aviv readies itself for a big party. We'll tell you all about it. First, the news. Welcome back. It is still Monday, June 8th, 2015. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News, and thank you for staying with us. You should have. It's a fascinating next block. It's got all kinds of things of different spectrums. Okay, now to our next item. 48 years ago, the Six-Day War ended with Israel's decisive victory, conquering Jerusalem, Gaza, Sinai, and the West Bank. It is a war portrayed to this day in Israel specifically as a righteous undertaking, a radiant emblem of Jewish pride, according to many Israelis. 1 week after the war, a group of young kibbutzniks, as we call people who live in kibbutzes in this country, led by renowned author Amos Oz, recorded intimate conversations with soldiers returning from the battlefield. The recording revealed an honest look at the moment Israel turned from David to Goliath. The Israeli army censored those recordings, allowing the kibbutz people to publish only a fragment of the conversations. A new documentary movie, a very courageous one, called Censored Voices, reveals the original recordings for the first time and the surprising accounts that emerged. We are very happy to be joined in studio by the director of Censored Voices, Mor Lucy. Mor, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And before we break this down, let's take a look at the trailer of this very courageous, important film. Let's have a look.
זאת המלחמה הראשונה שלי. אני חשבתי שאני צריך לספר את הסיפור של הפחד, כי זו הייתה המלחמה למעשה. אם היו אזרחים, אז צריך להרוג, לא צריך להרוג. אז לא חשבתי, אמרתי, להרוג, כל מי שרואים הורגים.
המבצע שמוטל עלינו לבצע זה פינוי התושבים. אתה לוקח את הערבי הזה והופך אותו לפליט, פשוט מגרש אותו משם.
יש לי הרגשה שהמלחמה הזו סיבכה אותם סיבוך כזה שלנו קשה מאוד לצאת ממנו.
I want to mention Mor Lucy, also the director of this film, that this has come out in a week that actually marks June 5th, is 48 years to the Six-Day War. In many, many minds of people living in Israel, the most glorified war, as we said in the beginning. And out comes this film from the people who fought them. First of all, why were these recordings censored?
Actually, the story is that a week after the war, Avram Shapira and Amos Oz went to record these soldiers that came back after the war. And I think, that the whole country was so euphoric. Everyone was dancing from the victory. And the soldiers who actually fought in this war felt very different feelings because they were on the battlefield and they saw the dynamics with the civilians. They deported families from their homes. They went out to the war feeling like they, defending their lives.
Defending in a point in a war that we have to remind viewers and audiences that it was a time in Israel that really they thought destruction was about
it was a righteous war.
Right.
And they went out to the battlefield feeling like they're defending their families and their life, and they were right about it. But then when the war, suddenly they found themselves deporting families from their homes and actually, controlling on territories, Arab territories.
Arab civilian populations, communities, want to be deporting or be
exactly. So they came back broken, and they had so many moral dilemmas, and they felt the disaster that will come on Israel if we'll stay in the territories because they were on the battlefield. So really, I think that the way that Israel thought of this war and the way that those soldiers felt was very different.
Yeah, listen, I want to commend you because making documentaries is a very hard task. Usually one needs, first it takes like 17 years to find the funding. But then, when you get to it, and you've made this documentary with your partner, whose name is?
Daniel Sivan, and also Ila Medalia and Netatz Webinar are the producers.
And you make this documentary, and it comes out on a year where elections in Israel may bring the rise to a very narrow right-wing government. And already, as the film is out of the gate, you guys are already under criticism. How do you confront that criticism? People, are saying that, have condemned it as being, how should I put this, a dangerous film filled with lies. What would you say to them?
So, first of all, it's until now, it's only Eli Ben-Daan, which is from the security department, and I think that,
Who said that without seeing the film?
Yeah.
We need to remind people.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, it's the story of everyone, and if we really want to go into a different future, if we really want to have a debate about, about our future, about our present, we should look at our past courageously, and not be blind of stories that really happened. So I think it's everyone's story, it's our reality, and it's our obligation to come and see and hear those stories of the soldiers. And now, it's coming out in Israel, and it's showing in all the theatrical, it's showing in Tel Aviv, in Cinema Orlando, and in Haifa, in Jerusalem, everywhere. And I really urge everyone to...
I urge everyone to see it because it's important to have a pluralistic discussion, not to mention that the Borders of 67 is something that as journalists or as people listening to stories about the Middle East and Israel and Palestinian territories, that's exactly what sticks. The people that were recorded in this film, are you meeting them again? They're older versions?
Yes.
What do they say today?
So in the film, actually, we decided that they will only listen to their film. They will not, only at the end of the film, each one of them is saying a sentence. But for me, it was also for them the first time that they heard their voice after 48 years.
Wow.
So, so the face and the mimics of the faces of them recalling what they said, for me, was much more stronger. We didn't want, we had this opportunity to make a film not like of people recalling their memories 40 years after. No, we had the real thing. We had memories which were recorded a week after the war, and we wanted to give them as much space, as much respect, and really to hear these voices and to hear these unique recordings that were recorded only a week after the war.
Amazing. Finally, what was the reaction, or maybe the strongest reaction that you remember as a director of this film, of these, older soldiers now? What was their reaction?
So, some of them were crying when they heard it for the first time, of course. Some of them were shocked. And many of them said, wow, I can't believe that I didn't move, my opinion. I was back then 22. Today I'm, 65, 70, 80.
And they think the same way.
And they think the same way. But it was very emotional for them to hear their voice and their thoughts only a week after the war. They haven't, it's the first time that it's coming out, so it's
phenomenal. And I urge anybody and everybody, if you're in the Middle East or if you're in and around, and to look for this film.
Also in the U.S., it will come out, I don't know exactly the date, but Music Box purchased Censored Voices, so it will also...
So it's also coming out. Yeah. Phenomenal work, very important work, very interesting work. More Lucy, we are locking you in the studio now with us as we move along, in the words of Monty Python, to something entirely different. Okay. But the pluralistic nature of Tel Aviv and artists and whatnot. It is a well-known fact also that Tel Aviv has become one of the main gay metropolitans of the world. Some even say that in certain aspects Tel Aviv is a competitor to cities like Berlin or New York. And this Friday, June 12th, the city holds its 10th Pride Parade. A tradition began with just a couple of hundred partiers, and it has grown rapidly into an event with over 100,000, yes, folks, 100,000 participants. And that seems to get wetter and wilder and more fun every single year. It's happening this week. It's wonderful to sit and actually, discuss good news. And for that, I am joined in studio by the Tube host, Jason Danino-Holt, which is here with us. And I want to, Jason, you said something fabulous to me before the cameras came on.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to put this on the table.
Yes, do so.
And no, because you said, I don't want to just sit here and I'm talking about the gay parade because I'm gay. And firstly, you're not just because of that sitting here, okay? But it's a valid point. You participated in the parade. I participated in the parade, okay? I'm about to say, I'm not gay, but I have many gay friends.
Okay.
You know the people who say that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, how comfortable do you feel now?
I feel comfortable all the time in my...
Amen.
Yeah, I do, in my sexuality and my gender and whatever. And I think the gay parade, it's not only the day itself, the party itself. I think the importance of it...
Is Tel Aviv?
Is also Tel Aviv, but it's also... it's a whole week, it's a whole month, basically.
It's a whole month, and you know, and I'm not stopping you just in front because we have also a clip from the Tel Aviv 2015 Gay Pride and, you know, the month and what's expected. Let's take a look and break it down from there. Yes, Jason. Okay, I think as a Tel Aviv, I wasn't born but raised in Tel Aviv, and I think you too.
Well, I'm born and raised in Tel Aviv.
Born and raised in Tel Aviv. So we're like the old timers.
Yes.
But you started saying this is not just the parade; it's the whole month. Tell us a little bit about the preparations and what makes it so spectacular, because it is spectacular.
I think the most interesting part about the gay life and the gay parade in Tel Aviv is that you have two things going on. You have the city itself.
Sure.
It's vivid nightlife. The fact that you can see many parents, two dads, two moms walking around Rothschild with their, with their twins, trawlers.
No, it's the norm. They're with their child in their, in preschools, in
There's
gowns.
something very liberal.
Right.
But then again, we are in Israel. And there's a conflict there all the time. And I think the fact that this month exists is to raise awareness all the time, to keep information going about what is yet to be done with the gay right, with the gay community. And the way to do it is also having...
lifestyle in general, I would say,
yes.
in many ways. But, when we look at that, because people always, they do, and as we said, you and I are Tel Aviv residents, in heart and soul. People always say that Tel Aviv lives in a bubble. But this thing has become a massive attraction for people around the world, irrespective of their gender or
30,000 tourists are about to arrive in Tel Aviv to party. It's a huge, first of all, it has huge economic value, and it's a statement saying that Tel Aviv is a city in the front line with all the biggest metropolitans, like you said, Berlin, New York, which is a great reason to celebrate. And I think the bigger the pride, the gay pride parade itself goes, then you have more awareness too. For example, this year it's all about transgender rights. That's like the theme of the parade.
Apropos Bruce,
apropos everything. I think the transgender revolution is at its peak now internationally and here in Tel Aviv, and for things not to just slide by, to give them all the focus they need, because there's a big difference between being gay, Ashkenazi, Tel Aviv middle-class man and being a transgender woman or man. There's still not equal rights, and we have to fight for each other, and it's obviously political as well.
No, and I think it's much easier, because I'm thinking of, you said it in Tel Aviv, much easier. But what about people who live in the periphery? What about those who live, internally? What about also, the Palestinian youth? I mean, I think that is something that needs to be addressed as well.
Hopefully, I hope that next year, it won't happen next year, maybe in 5 years, the gay parade will be in the Palestinian gay rights theme, because I think it's super relevant. But yes, of course, you have...
Jerusalem, I don't even know what happened to...
No, the Jerusalem parade is something different. It does happen. It's super political, this one, because nobody wants it to happen, and when it happens, it's to make a statement.
Definitely.
And I think that shows exactly the difference between this city and the rest of Israel. I think many things are happening together. I think that many gay places for youth and everything are being opened all around Israel. to get people, youngsters, 15, 14, 16, to feel that they're not alone. And yet again, knowing that there is this international thing going on in Israel also, the parents hear about it, everybody knows that it's something that's happening, and it makes it more legitimate. It normalizes something that in some cities, maybe in Israel, is still considered abnormal.
It's still considered abnormal, and sadly sometimes endangers, the lives of people who are faced with, bullying and condemnation and racism. But Jason, I want to thank you. And this whole thing, just to anybody watching, is happening on June 12th. Right?
Yes, Friday.
It's Friday, June 12th,
it's
and
Friday.
If you can, get yourself out.
It's a really good party.
It's a great party.
It's a great party.
It's a great party. More Lucy will be there. Of course, there we go.
Yeah.
So of course. Exactly.
Censored voices are something that need to be uncensored throughout all communities. So we'll be there uncensoring our voices.
Uncensoring voices. Amen. That was such a nice transition. And when we get back, something again completely different. Sports. I know nothing about that as well. So do stay with us. First, the news. Monday, June 8th, 2015, my favorite part of the show because it's the last one. I thought honesty should lead the way, right? Yeah, okay. Joined in studio by Mirav Savir and Ami Kaufman, and we are going to start with the beauty and the brains before Ami.
I get both of them.
Oh, that hurts so much.
I'm trying to get a rise.
What a compliment.
I know.
Beauty and the brains. I was waiting to see which one I am.
I'm thinking of something to lead to. Yeah.
I do bake.
You do? You do bake. Mirav baked to you.
I don't bake,
You
sorry.
don't bake.
And I don't cook either.
I know, because women don't bake these days, but they do sports.
Yes, they do.
Yes, the sports that you need
But
to know.
apparently it is declining, the number of women in sports industry. That's not what we're talking about, the number of women in sports broadcasting.
But Ami had like a whole thing about feminism and how in the press and how we still make less money in news, women in news.
Yeah, and the whole article came out yesterday about 8 reasons why women are not enough in the media business. But
the one
exactly.
not
So
in the
one of
media
things is
business.
sports.
Found that nice. Okay, yes.
Well,
so,
we're talking NBA. Women aren't in that either. Game 2 of the finals, Cleveland versus Golden State. Cleveland was able to pull it out in the last couple minutes. Overtime again, second game of the series. Both of them have gone into overtime. Cleveland was able to go into Golden State, into their arena, where they've only lost, I think, 3 or 4 times this entire season, and pull out a win, even though they're missing some of their biggest stars, the biggest starters. And this is completely credited to LeBron James. He came out, pulled an unbelievable win. 39 points, 16 rebounds, 11 assists in 50 minutes of playing.
Wow.
He basically was on the court the entire time. 50 minutes of playing. Wow. Unbelievable. If you think about
Is
it,
he
a
like
normal game.
I mean, he's presented to me as the god of basketball. Have you seen?
His nickname is the Chosen One, so I guess it works. It's either the god of basketball or
See,
Harry Potter.
I did not know that. Okay, so wow.
And listen, it's a huge win for the Cavs. They've only been to the finals once before, and they were swept by the Spurs back in 2007. So this is their first finals victory ever. So it's a big deal, and going into their arena and doing it there, bringing it back home, tied 1-1 instead of in a 2-0 deficit. It's huge for them. Obviously, it's still going to be a problem not having Kevin Love or Kyrie Irving both out with injuries. Kevin Love getting injured in the first series of the playoffs.
So.
Kyrie Irving getting injured in this last game,
hobbling off. It's the first time in a long
off.
time that David Blatt got some compliments for the coaching, right? That's
Absolutely. It's David Blatt.
David Blatt,
especially in Israel.
David Blatt, a Jew. But
in Israel, there's no team. It's just David Blatt. And other parts of the world, David Blatt is all of a sudden recognized as being the coach.
I'm glad you said that, because on the way to work this morning, I think somebody on the Israeli radio saying that David Blatt won last night.
Yeah, and I've always wondered, I'm like, how did he do that when he's...
Yeah, the one-man coach won. Yeah, wow.
Exactly.
Now they go to Cleveland, right? Now they go to the
So they go to Cleveland tied 1-1 instead of in a 2-0 deficit, which is a huge boost for them being able to go in there with this first win, and obviously first win ever in the finals for the Cavaliers. It's a notch in your belt, pressure's off. And a lot of people have been saying, now that Kyrie and Kevin Love are both injured, LeBron James kind of can take pressure off and say, well,
can
I'm
you
by
sit
myself.
a few
I
minutes
can't
on the
do
bench?
it. Yeah. I can't do it by myself. It's not my fault if we don't take home the title. That's what people are saying. Pressure's off. If all three of them were on the court, pressure would be on. But with 2 out of the 3 injured, LeBron has an excuse if he doesn't take home the title this year.
He's okay.
Which is an interesting way of looking at it, but
he's hungry.
Still, yeah, he's hungry for it. He wants it in the Cavaliers uniform. That's the biggest thing. He is their chosen one.
I mean, you know your basketball.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, like, finally, Merav has somebody to speak with. I'm just sitting here nodding, like yeah. Okay.
At least you're smiling.
Nodding like the blonde that I am. Yes.
All right. Moving on. Women's World Cup. Here come the women.
That I love. I'll tell you why. Because I still, to this day, it's the bra moment. Remember the bra moment?
1996?
1999, I think it was. 99. It was 96? Anyway, we know. Yeah. Okay. Women's World
Cup got underway this weekend in Canada. I believe we do have a report on it, so are we?
Yes, let's take a look.
Right.
It was a dark moment in the annals of women's football in Germany. Elimination at the quarter-final stage of their own World Cup 4 years ago. Despite that setback, they arrive in Canada the #1 ranked team, and with one thing in mind, winning the title.
We want to realise our dream here, and that's to win the World Cup. We know the road is long, so we're focusing first on our opening game against Ivory Coast.
Alongside Ivory Coast, Need's side are up against Norway and Thailand. She can call on an experienced group of players. 18 out of the 23 were in the European Championship winning squad 2 years ago. Among them, Paris Saint-Germain bound Anja Mittag and Celia Sasik, a recent European Cup winner with Frankfurt, both eager for action.
The worst is the last few days, when all you have to do is wait and train, and there isn't a game to play.
The Mannschaft, though, will have to do without 2 times European Player of the Year, Nadine Kessler, but they can count on another giant of the women's game, goalkeeper Nadine Angerer. She brings with her the experience of 139 caps and 2 World Cup wins.
We are
among the favourites. I'd be lying if I said we weren't. But there are other teams who are gunning for the title too.
Those teams include France, the US and holders Japan. Like them, Germany are aiming to lift the trophy on July the 5th in Vancouver, something which would make them the first side to record a hat-trick of World Cup titles.
Well, this is a report about, you know, the start of the German team and how it's going to, you know, essentially, well, it's on the route, and this thing has already started. Tell me about the German team.
Absolutely. So the German team coming in as the favorite, you heard, they're looking for that 3rd title. They lost in the quarterfinals on home soil, so they have a lot to play for this time around. And they came out and they showed that. They were basically playing in 2nd gear. They weren't even at their top, and they destroyed the Ivory Coast first-timers 10-0.
Oh, that's what we call wunderbar.
Is it?
Yes.
Translation, please. No.
Yeah, wunderbar. Okay, 10 wow.
Nothing.
Reminiscent of, we all had this discussion about another phenomenal game last year in the male World Cup with Germany.
A little bit more viewership. But if we're already talking about viewership, they are saying that they're expecting more than 400 million viewers. Actually, there were 400 million viewers turned into last World Cup, and now they're expecting a whole lot more. They've expanded it to 2014.
It's gaining momentum,
bigger and bigger. So this is something, you know, it's going to be broadcast in 187 territories worldwide. So it's definitely gaining their own momentum, not only the men's World Cup. And if you see countries like the United States, where football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, is gaining more and more popularity. And speaking of, Hope Solo, the women's national team is, U.S. women's national team is getting ready to play. And Hope Solo is finding some of her past coming back. She was arrested for domestic violence dispute about a year ago. And a bunch of that is resurfacing now, so we'll see how that may impact
for an American,
her.
You know, football player, I am going to call it football, Merav, I'm sorry. But, you know, if she were a male British man, okay, playing football and that surfaced, I think maybe she would be commended. But We have that really quickly, FIFA.
Really quickly. FIFA continues the scandals going on. Jack Warner is being hit from every angle with different accusations about the fact that he took $10 million and used it for personal cash withdrawals and money laundering. And not only that, they're also saying that the 2010 World Cup was supposed to go to Morocco until South Africa was the higher briber. And
I think I'm quoting the FBI spokesperson who came out in the presser and said, this is the World Cup of fraud. And, you know, and they've just been issued a red card, and it's going to be very interesting to see how FIFA survives, if at all. But maybe I'm, you know,
and how long these will go out, how long we'll continue finding out more and more. Jack Warner is the one who said he's going to unleash an avalanche, and it all seems to be hurling towards him. So I don't know how much he wants to unleash now.
Yeah, but it's coming up, and I think, you know, we'll be seeing a lot more of you, because I think, you know, you're the only one who understands it, Marav. But you're locked in studio now with us as we move to the real important news of the day. From the man in the pink shirt. I will stop. I love just...
No, go ahead. I
know. But it's the bow tie that actually complements the color of the shirt.
Complements the shirt.
It does.
Yeah.
It's working.
And my face that complements the whole...
The whole thing, the whole package.
Come on.
The package. The viral spiral that is the web review. Yes.
Yes, okay, we're going to start with a totally ridiculous app that is topping the App Store charts.
Okay.
And it's called Like Parent. What you do is you get an option to, as you see in this picture, to put 2 photos of your parents on each side of the app, and it shows you with a crazy algorithm that they have who you are more.
This is the social network scene. I'm sorry, it's from the social network. Remember the social network? How Zuckerberg started. Continue. This is horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. Now,
you pick which parent you like.
Now, the developer says he's from Thailand. He says it's totally random. It has nothing to do with science. There's no algorithm, nothing whatsoever.
There's nothing.
And he's already, there are over 1 million downloads of this app. This Business Insider reporter, his name is Alex Heath, he tried it twice. He put, as you see in this picture, 2 of his colleagues. Now, on the first try, he came out 80% like his male colleague.
His male colleague.
And on the second try, he came out 99% like his female colleague. Totally random. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's pointing it.
Yeah.
Yes. Off to Britain, where Britain and the whole world is talking about 4 photos that just came out.
Yes.
Can we take a look at some of these really nice?
Please.
Cuteness alert. Cuteness alert.
Cuteness alert.
Prince George and Princess Charlotte, where some new photos came out of them holding each other. And
oh wait!
Look at that!
Look at that word. I just want to know.
He's kissing her, getting a little kiss there on the front.
I've got to, as a mother, and the first thing that goes through my head is, how do they get the hair of the boy to go like that to the...
She's perfect.
Yes, I know. Is that spray?
And do you know who took the pictures?
Yeah, come on, tell us.
The Duchess of Cambridge herself took the pictures.
It is the princess.
I would like to tell you how the BBC reported this. This is journalism at its best.
Try your British accent.
Photography is listed as one of the Duchess's hobbies in her biography on the royal website. The pictures were taken on a Canon EOS 5D Mark II camera.
And it's now the best-selling camera in England.
I just want to refer to this and say that this was the BBC reportage, and behind the scenes it's saying, it's her saying, I'm going to take the pictures of my children, folks.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Step
right. That's
out.
a good point.
I think she took Diana one step further.
Think so?
I'm hoping. Come on. And it is Charlotte Diana, right?
Charlotte Diana, right. It's her second name, Charlotte Diana.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Anyway, staying with Britain.
Yes.
If there's anything I like, it's a little Twitter feud. I've been in some Twitter feuds myself, and my blood pressure goes right high. Yeah. This one is between 2 people that I really like, John Cleese being one of them. The other one is Morgan Pierce.
I saw that. Yes.
You saw, okay, so how did this whole thing start? This is going to take me a minute or 2. I'm going to break it down for you. You're going to follow me with this.
And you're going to give us food for thought, because Narav Savir and I are going to get into it ourselves.
So Morgan Pierce...
Do you bring the topic?
Yeah, I'll bring the topic. Yeah.
Morgan Pierce wrote a piece last week, or almost 2 weeks ago, that he was in a restaurant in New York looking forward to getting his food, and he turned to his left and saw that John Cleese was sitting right next to him. And this is what he wrote. For one tiny nanosecond, our eyes locked in mutual shock, then equally mutual withering contempt. For the next 2 hours, we avoided all form of contact, physical, verbal, visual. It was magnificently British. And then we come to Twitter.
First of all, if you throw something like that into the fire, you're going to get a response.
Okay, so John Cleese responded quite lately. It took him like 10 days to respond. 2 days ago. Let's take a look at the first tweet that John Cleese put up there. Pierce Morgan writes that I didn't recognize him in a restaurant in New York. I did. I just didn't want to speak to someone I truly detest.
You gotta love this.
Okay, let's bring up the next tweet.
Yes.
Anyway, I thought he was in jail after admitting he'd authorized phone hacking at the Daily Mirror. Still, our British legal system works slowly. And now it's time for Piers Morgan to reply.
He jumps back.
No, John Cleese, I said you did recognize me, and the revulsion was mutual. Here's the column. P.S. When are you going to be funny again, John Cleese? It's been a few decades.
Low blow. Low blow. Low blow.
Low blow.
Yeah,
they are
low
now,
blow.
because it gets worse. These grown-up men are acting like children. Let's see the next tweet. John Cleese says, Pierce is now asking when I'll be funny again. It's been a long time. Answer, Pierce, when are you going to be talented? It's been a lifetime.
Oh my God.
Bear with me, bear with me. This is painful. Come on, you're loving it.
Meanwhile, I'm loving it. I'm just here.
Pierce Morgan, ooh, now you're getting malicious and nasty at John Cleese. Do you think I'm one of your ex-wives?
I keep looking at the number of retweets and favorites, and I have to say, John Cleese is destroying Piers Morgan.
He is.
I think I have a tweet. I think I have one more tweet.
That's a person who knows her sports.
Do we have one more tweet?
Who's winning? Yeah.
Do we have one more tweet where he says, here, thank you, Mara, for bringing that up. My thanks to Piers Morgan for providing me with my most successful tweet ever. 10,000 favor me for saying I detest him in 2 hours. Thanks, tweets. I see my tweet about Piers is favored by 15,000. That's like an hour later. Clearly, I must insult the slimy, attention-seeking little troll more often.
Nice. Any response to that one? Or that's where it ended?
Oh, yeah. Wait, there is one more response. I think, okay, glad I was able to make you popular again.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah, well, we are, I mean, with all due respect.
So basically, John Cleese is Germany and Piers Morgan is the Ivory Coast.
Exactly.
Nice.
Ka-ching. Okay. One last one.
Okay. Do you have an animal in the house? Or I don't remember. Do you have
I did.
You ever did that thing where, put the animal
in front of... You killed it?
No.
Okay. I have cats. Yeah, I have cats.
You put the animal in front of a mirror and you see how the animal kind of reacts kind of funny.
Let's take a look.
This guy did it in Gabon in the wild with some animals with mirrors he put in the wild.
Crazy stuff. Put it up. The same reaction looking at myself in the mirror every morning. I don't know if you're doing like, yeah. Okay, that was all the time that we had. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, have feuds with us if you want. And tomorrow morning, tune into I-24 News for another morning edition. We will be here that early. Thank you.